Hello, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Two Bald Nerds. We are going to talk about telemetry. Mike, where are we going with this? What exactly are we doing today?
Telemetry, the big, spooky Big Brother is watching every website you go to and your location, and what kind of cheese whiz you put on your crackers, and what kind of sexy gold chain you wear around your neck. And the end result these days being nothing more than watching ads for stuff that you've already bought. But, what does this actually mean long term? And so I want to talk about telemetry today. And in particular, if you don't think that your smartphone, your home automation, or your Windows desktop isn't telling on you, then you're a silly hamster. So telemetry is all the stuff that your devices report back to Big Brother, letting you know stuff. And before we get into too much detail here, Richard, telemetry in and of itself is not always evil. I can't tell you how many times I've used, for example, Google location services on my Android phone. And it's like, oh, do you remember that trip we took, Richard? And we had all that good time. What was that restaurant we went to on Thursday? And you can't remember, and I can't remember, but I go through location services and scroll back to that Thursday, and I can find stuff, right? So things like that are nice. Okay.
Right.
Have you seen the famous Capital One add-on that's put onto many web browsers?
Yeah, we've talked about it before in the past. Yeah.
We did talk about it. That's right.
Yeah.
So
saves money.
It can save money, but at what price? And I use it too.
It's peeking in. It knows what you're looking for, and it sees your activity when it comes to shopping and so forth. So
yeah, it's not just peeking, and you invited. There's this little thing going. Rah, rah, rah. You're like, here, come stand at my door, right here next to me, okay? And anytime I'm looking to shop for something, if you know somebody has got a better deal, call me. And it's like, rah, 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 rah. For some reason, I always see that add-on as a little gremlin thing, house elf.
Good little Capital One gremlin.
That's it, yes. Which I have installed for free. You always wonder, one of the big challenges about telemetry is, what are they looking for? You know what I mean? It's like, And so telemetry is a relatively newish thing, I guess, for someone like myself. But I want to concentrate on Windows for starters, Richard. Have you ever run, say, a netstat command on a modern Windows system?
Yeah, I actually just did it the other day on my laptop that's sitting here on the desk.
Here's good old netstat. You've seen this a few zillion times, right?
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And this is a Windows system. So what I want you to do is, look at all, it's scrolling, it's bouncing back and forth really quick. Look at all these listening ports. That means you are running some type of server. It is listening on all of these port numbers. What is it listening for? Well, it's listening for whatever Microsoft wants it to. One of these particular listening ports could just be GPS data, for example, things like that. But, all you have to do is run netstat, and you're kind of like, why are they looking at all these things? And so my attitude, just so you know, is I don't give away anything about me for free, okay? So I will give you information about me, but you're going to have to pay for it, and I'm going to have to understand it quickly, and not just through a terms of service page that's 42 pages long while I'm trying to install an app. Roger that? So I've almost given up on trying to get people to read terms of service. Usually I can get somebody to read terms of service. Just go ahead and read the terms of service for Facebook Messenger. That's enough to scare the bejeezers out of you right there. But
does anybody actually read terms of services and end user license agreements? Does anybody actually ever read those?
I think everybody goes through a period in their life where they try. And I've rarely met a nerd, usually a nerd, who's like, oh yeah, I've read them, and but they'll keep saying the same thing after a while. But no, there are people, myself included, who do try to read them. So yes to that answer. So anyway, You have to pick one of two things. You have to be I, for one, welcome our new robot overlords kind of person when it comes to telemetry. Or you can be the, aluminum foil hat, building a underground subterranean lair, storing up on beans and water kind of person.
I was going to ask if this was going to be a conspiracy theory episode, because it can go that way.
Well, everything's a conspiracy to some extent, Richard. Everything in life is a conspiracy. It's a matter of how much is it going to hurt me in the long run. That's often the question.
It's funny. I know it started as a joke when it came to like Android phones and people saying that, oh, they're listening to you, right? They really are paying attention to everything you're doing. And I can look up something on my phone and I go to my computer and it shows up on my computer. It shows up in Instagram or Facebook or anything like that. I mean, it just gets spread across anything and everything you're doing. So I get what you're saying, because it is listening, to pretty much everything you're doing.
You got to be careful. Like, again, let's in this case, let's pick on Android phones for a minute. Mm-hmm. Android in and of itself has almost no telemetry. It's Google.
Yeah,
it's
agreed.
Google. So
agreed.
You can, if you want to, you can build yourself an Android phone that is pretty telemetry free. The downside is that once you do that, then all of a sudden you're like, oh, well, let me install Facebook because I like Facebook and my friend Richard is on Facebook and we like to talk about plumeria, right? So you install that, and then all of a sudden you're like, oh, here comes the telemetry. And then you're like, oh, I like Google Maps. The location services are great because I can find that restaurant we went to on last Thursday. Oh boy, here we go. So
yeah, the slippery slope.
It is a slippery slope, and it's usually, there's no evil on the other side. There is business, there is indifference.
Yeah.
There are a bunch of people who want to grab data about you, not because they're evil, but because they want to make a better mapping program, or, they want a program that's, stick something in your neck and it'll measure your blood pressure. I don't know, that it's programmers are usually some of the most intrusive people there are, simply because they're interested in making their program be cool. And if I happen to need to know your eye color and what time you go to bed on Thursday, well, I'll just go ahead and get that data, because what does it hurt?
Now, a lot of this kind of started just from what I think some would say was pretty harmless actions of monitoring the device and how it was functioning so that they could get data on improving the system, right? That's kind of where this all came from, but it exploded into the advertising, right?
I would say that came mainly from Windows, because Windows did, well, actually, I'll go back further than that. I think it really goes back to early generation web browsers, where I needed to know stuff like what operating system you're running, what browser you're running on, and a few basic things like that, so I could get the web page to look good. I would argue that's probably where it started. And and then the other big mistake we made is we let a web search company start making phones. I mean, come on, think about that, people, just for a minute, And so you really got two different angles there. Google did all this because they were a search engine company and they want better ads is where it started, but then it generates into all kinds of other stuff. Like, for example, if let's say you like baseball, you go over down to Minute Maid Field here in Houston, watch the Astros play. Well, all of a sudden, it's through location services. It's like, Mike Meyers, he's going to the ball game a lot. Let's give him a deal on some hats, or let's give him a deal on this. Next thing you know, then we got a deal on apps. The one place that Google doesn't do as good of a job as I think it could is, who does it give that data to? See where I'm coming from?
Well, don't they just make it available and the different services can use it? I mean, I don't know that they're actually.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, there's certainly within, yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right, Richard. I'm not good. You're absolutely correct that within certain services you have access to that type of data, but over time it can be drilled down. And then don't even get me started on law enforcement. And the number of queries to Google, like in the last 10 years, has increased by a factor of like 20 or something
Yeah.
like that. And and here's the line I love to hear. Well, why would you worry if you're not doing anything wrong? It's like, oh
Yeah.
my God, you don't
Right.
have to do anything wrong, people. You just have to be within the grenade blast of somebody else who is, or somebody else is getting divorced, or somebody who's having a property tax issue, or somebody who's trying to deal with a recall on their car. And you just have to be close enough to get the people with the big guns to be interested in you. And now we have trouble. So
Well,
I
it's
think,
all psychological stuff. I mean, my wife and I start talking about a vacation and we look up, rural Caribbean because we like to go on cruises. And all of a sudden, it's just like a barrage of Royal Caribbean ads everywhere that you go, and everything that you see is just Royal Caribbean, Royal Caribbean, Royal Caribbean. It's like, okay, I get it, but that psychological part actually does manipulate you. It's just like the food commercials. That's why they play them so frequently. When you see an ad for Taco Bell or Burger King or your whatever favorite restaurant you have, they play them so frequently because it wears you down. You're like, oh, I need that burger. Oh, I need that taco, and you go get it. So we're being manipulated. I definitely think that's happening for sure.
no, we're definitely so what do we do about it? And that's really the last thing I want to talk about here is that I wish I could tell you, okay, go to this site in Windows, run regedit or something like that, and it will stop it. And there are things like that. However, these things change. Microsoft isn't dumb. Just since Windows 11 came out alone, we've had, in my opinion, got to be careful with that, 3 different updates which changed the way telemetry was being acquired in one way or another. Okay. And you've just got to be careful is all I'm trying to say. And it's a part of our lives now that we monitor. Like for example, I use the wonderful advertisement blocker called a Pi-hole. Are you familiar with this?
Yeah.
I live on mine, and I think it's a big benefit. Secondarily, I am constantly monitoring pretty much almost any time. Let's use Windows as an example. When a knowledge base article comes out or something points towards new telemetry or new ways to grab telemetry, and then having to deal with that. Setting up your firewalls on your own system, or whatever version of going into regedit at this time to make a change. It's not one fix. It is a new thing
tough.
that you have to spend a certain amount of time dealing with. And the other thing is, like on the Android side, do you really need Google? And this is a big challenging question. I personally have been working to get off of Google now for 4 or 5 years. And the one that still holds me on to this day, Richard, is Gmail. I can't quite unhook from Gmail. But to me, Gmail is the least cruel of any of those particular products.
Right.
But so the important thing is you got to keep in mind is that your information is private by default, and be careful about what you do in terms of applications you use, operating systems you use, and from this day forward, monitor thyself, because no one else is going to do it for you. That's for sure.
Agree. And I think it's tough for most normal users though, because they don't have the time to invest in, doing research on what ports are, actively listening on your machine and checking to see what telemetry items are being pulled on those different ports, or blocking IP addresses that are communicating with your device in those telemetry actions as well. So it's a little bit tougher for normal everyday users to do anything with it, right?
Yeah, especially when they find themselves stopping telemetry, and then suddenly that one thing they liked stopped working, whatever that might be,
Right.
And now they find themselves in this big backpedaling, trying to undo some manual registry edit that they didn't even keep track of where they did it. They don't know how to undo it. Not that I've ever done that. I mean, other people. And then you find themselves in there, well, I'm just going to live with it. I, for one, worship our new robot telemetry overlords. Yeah, you can't do anything about it, Mike. You might as well just live with it. No, fight the fight.
Oh boy. All right. Well,
that's me.
Well, I was gonna say I don't know where we go from here other than welcome robot overlords.
No, I say continually watch and investigate new options of telemetry. They almost always show up. A lot of times they show up on front page media these days. I can't tell you how many times Good Morning America has reported on particularly noxious telemetry issues. And just stay a part of it, stay in there, and don't be afraid to turn things off when at all possible. Don't be afraid to say no to that very, very sexy app that takes a lot of information in the background. Sometimes you just have to say no.
All right, everybody. Well, you heard it from Mike Meyers himself. Sometimes you just have to say no.
All
See
right,
you
man.
on the next episode.
Bye. If you like Two Bald Nerds, check out our entire playlist right here. It's a lot of fun. We'll see you there.